All right, let's bring the Dune City Council meeting Wednesday, January 8th, 2020 to order, please. We have a roll call.
Certainly. Mayor Robert Forsythe,
Here.
Councilor Sheldon Meyer,
Present.
Councilor Duke Wells,
Here.
Councilor Susan Snow, here, Councilor Tom Mallon.
Here.
I do expect Councilor Orr, but I haven't heard anything from Councilor McDowell.
Okay. Would you all join me in pledge allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I would remind you on the consent agenda that I tried really hard, but there is an amended bill.
Yeah, shut it. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Third. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none is passed. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with amendment. So moved. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that's passed as well. Announcements and correspondence. Jamie?
First announcement, before I get on to the regular announcements, if you have not signed up and you want to speak this evening under citizen input, you will need to come sign in. So if you haven't signed in, come sign in. You can do that voluntarily. Dune City has one opening for employment to the Planning Commission for the term ending January 12, 2022, and 2 openings on the Budget Committee. We encourage you all to, not you, you're doing enough already. Did that work for you? We encourage anybody to come sign in. It's the best way to learn about the city and how we do business is to participate on one of our committees, either the Planning Commission or the Budget Committee. So after you're here, feel free to come down. We try not to make it too much work for you. The Dune City Council will hold a goal-setting session on Thursday, January 16th at 4 p.m. to discuss goals for the 2021 fiscal year. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on ordinance number 253, flood damage prevention, on Thursday, January 23rd at 6 p.m. The City Council will hold a public hearing on ordinance number 253, flood damage prevention, during its next regularly scheduled session on February 12, 2020 at 6 p.m. For the record, the Sayusau School District has raised the per square foot excise tax to $1.35 per square foot for residential new construction and 67 cents per square foot for commercial construction.
Thank you. Citizen input. Now, normally we don't have conversations about things that are on the agenda, but if you'd like to speak about anything that's on the agenda, I do invite you to sign up and come up and talk. Thank you. Derek Wells.
Were you guys able to get the piece of paper that I handed out for everybody? With the address on?
This one.
Sure.
Anyways, I'm Derek Wells. I live at 5214 Hilltop Drive. I followed the last couple of months, just kind of the talks about the deer and all that stuff, and I just sitting around my house. I thought, well, I was hearing both ways what was going to happen, and I thought, well, I'm going to be a voice for the deer. So I basically, over the weekend, and I noticed that they wanted to concentrate in the Hilltop area, which is where I live. And I ended up going around door to door, and I didn't know, but maybe one person on this list. And I went to 21 houses, as you can see, and I was really overwhelmed by honestly how many people were for the deer. Out of the 21 I went to, there was only one person that was against the deer, and I wasn't able to make it to all the houses. Some weren't home, some maybe had locked fences, so I concentrated on Spruce Lane, Clear Lake, Syracuse, and the Hilltop area. Meeting with these people and talking to them, I went up to their door. I didn't sway them one way or the other. I just asked them what their opinion was, and it ended up leading into a 20 to 30-minute conversation. And all these addresses, they all said that you could contact them if you needed more information, but they were all for the deer. And basically a good majority of them were just didn't want to see them taken away or, euthanized or whatever you guys were wanting to do. They were thinking that, maybe fine for people that kept feeding them was the best solution for a while. And I talked to one gentleman that's been here for over 30 years, and he's said that the deer population hasn't went up or down since he's been here. It's just that there's more houses going up, there's less trees around, and basically that's just my feeling on it, is that I don't think that we need to be reacting to getting rid of them or transplanting them right now. I work for the State Highway Department, and we pick up animals on the road, and since I've been there over the last couple of years, we've picked up 3 deer on the Clear Lake area, which we normally don't do, but if we get a call, we'll go take care of it. And, there's strong feelings, but I'm sure that if I went to 100 houses, there might be 5, 6, 7 people against them, but when there's almost 95% of people for the deer, I just want you guys to take that in consideration. And, maybe the people that are against them, maybe build a little higher fence, or, do what you gotta do. You can get on realtor.com, there's plenty of houses for sale in town too, so. That's all I really got to say, and I appreciate your time. And I just hope that you take that in consideration, that 90% of the population that do live out here are for the deer. Of course, there's gonna be a couple in here or there that aren't, but I don't think they're really a problem. I got friends that bring their kids out in this area just to be able to see a nice buck or does or whatever, because, I'm a hunter myself, and you can go in the woods and you can go day after day, and it's pretty hard to see any kind of animals anymore. So I think it's a privilege to have them out here, but I thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Jaden, Gordon?
I'm not going to stand up here. So good evening. My name is Jamie Gorder. I just am here to comment on the newspaper article regarding the idea of deer relocation. A little bit of background: my husband and I bought our house out here 2 years ago on Hilltop. We looked for about a year and a half specifically in the Dune City area because this is where he grew up, and we wanted to be surrounded by the natural beauty and wildlife that is out here in Dune City. It has also given us an opportunity as parents to educate our son on all the different wildlife around, and just to see them in their environment and how they interact with each other. So after that article, I decided to do a little bit of research on the outcome of trapping and relocating specifically black-tailed deer. So I have some handouts here for you guys, Rapunzel, if you want to share them now or later. So these handouts they just kind of explain a few instances, situations where deer relocation is absolutely not the most humane choice for an overpopulation of deer, and I don't believe that's the case on Hilltop. Hopefully the gentleman from ODFW can clear that up later in this meeting. To kind of quickly sum up what I found out was that because of injury during trapping and moving, the stress of relocating, and the inability to adjust to their new environment, only 16% of relocated deer survive. So that's on average an 84% die as a result, and that fatality rate is just staggering to me. I believe that there are things that we can do as a city to address this, to the individual complaints as they come in. We can encourage homeowners to plant flowers and shrubs that are not pleasant to local wildlife. Yes, have that discussion on building fences and the possibility of using deer repellents. I've included the top 7 I found in my research on the last page there in your handout. I just want to remind all of you, and hopefully that you'll think about, things are not always what they seem. The deer aren't crossing the road is crossing into the forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Rapunzel.
I will pass for now, but reserve the right to comment or yield my time later.
Okay. Andrew Kellerman.
Yeah, Kellerman. Andrew Kellerman, I am a resident, and I'm going to sit also.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Please.
I'm on Spruce Lane, and we have a great opportunity to have deer visit our house all the time. We have people stopping by that just love to see them, because they're good children there also. You know, just a little fanciful if I can. I picture a group of deer up here voting on us. Maybe we should be eliminated. And it's sort of squatters' rights. They were here first. They weren't. But the serious part about this is that I'm concerned about is that mountain lions, as far as I know, are equal opportunity carnivores. And I don't know about the balance we have here, whether it's a good one or a bad one, food sources versus mountain lions. But I came from Southern California, and we had instances down there where equal opportunity meant children. And I have 8 grandchildren. None of them live here, but I know some of you do. And you probably have grandchildren here, or no young children. And an injured mountain lion, and I'm just thinking about one incident, just the possibility, not about probability, but the possibility one of those children could get hurt or worse, because we chose to lower by 10%, 15%. What if we go too far? You know, what if we go too far? That's on our heads. And I think this is something we let God take care of. It's, who are we? So anyway, that's my plea. So, and obviously I am pro deer. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andrew. Gary Jensen.
Jerry Jensen, Pin City resident for 55 years. My family moved here in either 1904 or 6. They survived partially on deer, as Mr. Wells mentioned. I hunt also, but I love my deer. And I had problems when we first moved into the house where we have now, 92. The deer want to eat stuff, so I built a fence around it. I've not had any problem with the deer. The only problem I have is coons and birds eating all my fruit trees and that stuff. And I've heard stuff about deer being aggressive. I'd like to have someone show me that. I have a little 2-year-old grandson that wants to pet the deer. And if he goes up to them too fast, boom, they vanish. I've not seen any deer be aggressive. And then as far as the fellow mentioned about the cats, my son and I hunt, and if anybody knows, and the game can probably help you out on that, about the square foot of cat covers, they are getting pushed out of their territory because they're overpopulated. We hunt, and my son and I have had them follow us, and we've seen more cats hunting than bear out in the wild. Plus, I know my neighbor also had a bear tear his fence down, get to his apples. And then from a business standpoint, I have had to repair people's homes that cost a lot more money by little rodents and stuff in the thousands of dollars that were damaged by that versus a deer eating a few flowers. So the deer, when I was a kid with a big garden, we had to have electric fence, but we had no garden. So the deer have been around, as the one fellow mentioned, for years. So I think it's something that we learn to live with, get educated on them. I myself as a hunter have been around them for years. In the last 5 years, I've learned way more than what I ever thought I might know from the deer being directly involved with them. And yes, there's people that love to come out and see the deer and just are amazed by what it is like to have them around. So I think it's just something we need to get educated on and learn to live with them and enjoy them. That's what I did. I used to get disgusted because I liked roses. And I built a fence and said, forget it. No use stressing, I'll just enjoy them. So, thank you very much.
Bonnie Allen.
Well, I'm heartened to see that I'm in very good deer-loving company tonight. And I wanted to point out that building a fence was an option that I had to pursue because I'm an avid gardener as well as a deer admirer. And we have learned to coexist. The Dune City planning restrictions on a fence are currently 6 feet, which is actually not prohibitive for a deer if they're truly determined to get in and eat your garden or your roses. So I would like to consider an option whereby we could add a provision to the code that fences could be as high as 10 feet if warranted. That would probably be a variance. I'm very anxious to hear what the Department of Fish and Wildlife have to say, and I would like to, I would hope that the council would not take any action to kill or relocate our deer tonight. That I think there's substantial citizen input that needs to be considered before any dire approach is undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'll let you know now, it's probably a good time. I for one, and I don't think the council is ready to make any decision tonight either way. We need to pull in all sorts of information, we need to hear from the professionals and take it up. I can't imagine that we can all come to intelligent consensus tonight, so I don't think that's an issue.
I did not sign up.
That's fine.
I've been here for the last couple meetings, so
Yeah, please.
the council actually knows. One of the things that's clearly did not, I'm sorry?
Name for the record, please.
Oh, Juliana Johnson.
Thank you.
One of the things that's clearly in confusion, the article in the newspaper described the area that had a problem as Hilltop. The other ladies and I that have come in that have complained do not live in the Hilltop area. We live on Summit, Cherry, Myrtlewood, all across the bridge there. So we're not in the area that was surveyed and such. And we have used deer repellent. I am building a fence. We have planted plants that are not deer friendly, except now there are. My neighbor who's been there 40 years, because I am relatively new to Dune City, although I've lived in Oregon with the deer in the rural areas all of my life, she's lived there 40 years, and she has plants that all of a sudden the deer are eating that they haven't been eating before. And that's why we have come in. And the gentleman that wanted his child to pet the deer, come by anytime. Mornings and evenings are great, but I'm sure the law enforcement people do not want that to happen because that's not supposed to happen. But the deer are that friendly. There was 3 of them in my yard when I came here tonight. And I would also like the deer experts to address when I'm standing there with my cat, the deer are approaching the cats. Yeah, I've got little cats. And they're going, what am I supposed to do? I'm not supposed to harass the deer. Give me some answers. My friend that also was there was eating on her deck. It's a low deck. The deer came up on the deck. Again, without harassing the deer, what do? That's what we're asking. That's what we're bringing to you. They're eating things that they've never eaten before. There's poop all over our yards. You can come visit them anytime you would like. We do see people walking along the road, feeding the deer. And the deer are right there, they're hand feeding, they're not tossing it, they're literally hand feeding it. So that's what we have brought in. We don't hate deer. We think they're beautiful, but we want a little space. We want some space, and that's why we brought it here to say, come on, what do we do to give us some space so we don't feel threatened by the deer? Our animals do not feel threatened by the deer, and we can walk in our yard without getting poop on our yard and have something the deer don't eat. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Julie. Presentations and training, schedule harassment training.
Now, quickly before the presentation by Fish and Wildlife, we are mandated, all of you and all of us, the staff, are mandated for 2 hours of training on harassment. It's passed and became law effective July 1st, actually. I think it's been around for a long time.
Is this how to or not to?
What you
Just
can
need
and
to be
cannot
clear.
do. Let's just put it that way.
Just need to be clear.
So you should have a calendar in your packet, and you just give me a day that we can do 2 hours of training together.
Okay.
And or you can do it on your own at home. It's available on the CIS website.
Oh, is it on
But it
the
is a
C-
2-hour class. So if you don't do it by the next city council meeting at home,
Then we'll have to come up with
right.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is it Jason Kirshner?
Yep.
Thank you. Folks, let me clarify something for you. Since we're not going to really take any action tonight, we'll just have discussion stuff. You've got to present to us what you had to say. We would like you to, I don't really want to get into a whole lot of question and answers from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Let them do their presentation, and the board will take up their information just like we're taking up yours. Okay? Appreciate that. Thank you.
So my name is Jason Kirchner. I'm the district wildlife biologist here on the Mid-Coast, based out of Newport. I cover an area from the Salmon River up by Lincoln City, clear through Taconich Lake, just north of the Umpqua. I've got some documents here I was going to pass out to you, if that's all right. I've got some maps here of the survey that we did. Here's some maps. And then I've got our administrative rule on this urban deer pilot project. So we have this pilot project to address problems in urban areas where people are having problems with the deer overpopulating. So before we allow a city to control the deer population, there's some requirements that need to be done. The first thing that needs to be done is the city needs to adopt and enforce an ordinance restricting placing, depositing, distributing, storing, or scattering food, garbage, or any other attractant so as to knowingly constitute a lure, attractant, or enticement for deer. And you guys have already done that. You guys have an ordinance to keep people from feeding the deer. The second,
Supposedly.
what's that?
Supposedly.
Yeah. So I wanted to find out too is, you guys have adopted that ordinance. Are you guys enforcing that ordinance on folks who are feeding the deer?
Only to the extent, I am the code enforcement officer for the city, and only to the extent that we get an assigned complaint of someone feeding the deer. And that means they need to tell me who it is. Sometimes they provide pictures, but that doesn't help me if I don't know who they are. And yes, we have enforced.
Okay. Are they getting fined or?
Not at this point, I'd talk to them first. I
Okay.
don't see a need to really get ugly right off the get-go.
Okay.
If I get a second report that they're feeding, then yes, that would be the next step.
Okay. So after, if you're continuing to have a problem, the next step would be to adopt an ordinance, resolution, or order declaring that the deer population have risen to levels that constitute a public nuisance. So that would be your next step. I don't think you guys have done that yet, have you?
No, not that I'm aware of.
No, we wanted to get it was for consideration, but we
Okay.
decided to ask you to come.
Okay. If that happens, then the next step would be for you guys to petition the department for kill permits necessary to remove deer after that.
Okay.
So if the city was to go forward with this program, we have responsibilities outlined of who does what. So there will be, if this all passes and goes through at some point, if it ever does, we'll have to designate dates when, the department will designate dates when take would be allowed, what time of the year, a certain time period. We would determine the number of deer to be taken, and if it's a females or bucks, those are bucks, and how many. And we wouldn't want to exceed removal, that would, we just want to exceed the removal that would no longer constitute a public nuisance to the city. Now, the city would be responsible for designating areas in the city limits where deer are to be taken and designate the manner of taking the deer, which may be the use of firearms or by live capture. You cannot use any poisoning, immobilization, or tranquilizing drugs or chemicals. And they're only to be euthanized for the purpose of population control. So if you're to use live capture methods, the traps have to be checked once a day, and the animal needs to be euthanized immediately. We don't do any relocation or releases. The city and agents have to follow the department-approved capture methodology and handling requirements. It has to be, you have to follow the American Veterinary Medical Association standards, so euthanasia has to be humane. And if you're going to use a firearm to euthanize the animal, it has to be non-lead ammunition. And you have to designate an agent with appropriate qualifications to take deer. So typically we use USDA Wildlife Services on issues related to animal removal in the city. So. So, unlike the case of Dune City where some of the deer densities are high, a lot of it's just private property. So the agent you would hire would have to get permission from each landowner to do the work on the property. And that's kind of what's outlined here under agent authorization to take deer on other than city-owned property. Now, when the deer are euthanized, they have to be salvaged. So they need to be donated to a charity. The meat of the deer needs to be donated to a food bank or other charitable organization. And that's outlined under the salvage deer paragraph. And then you may sell the hides and the antlers from the deer taken to help fund the program. To help the cost of the agent is going to cost some funds to do the work, and so you could sell the antlers and hide to make some money to pay for that. So that's kind of the basis of our policy on removing deer in the city. And now I'll kind of briefly talk about the survey we conducted not too long ago. What was the date? So December 16th, we conducted a nighttime survey in Dune City. We saw a total of 42 deer. 26 were does, female deer. 8 were fawns. It was an average about 30.8 fawns per 100 does. We saw 8 bucks with an average about 30.8 bucks per 100 does. And that's a measurement we use to for our management of deer. We use this ratio of bucks to does and fawns to does. We traveled 13.2 miles in the city, and we saw 3.2 deer per mile. Now there was an area in town where we saw a higher density of deer, and I called it the downtown area. It's the Hilltop Road area kind of block. We saw 28 deer in that area, 15 does, and 7 fawns. We had 46.7 fawns per 100 does, 6 bucks, 40 bucks per 100 does. And we traveled about 3.4 miles in that area. And we had about 8.2 deer per mile. Now our benchmarks for the Siuslaw unit, the state is broken up into wildlife management units. And in this area it's called the Siuslaw unit. And our benchmark is about 25 bucks per 100 does and about 3 deer per mile. So in general, if you looked at the whole city, you're about at the benchmark for what we expect for the whole unit. But then there's a certain area in town is quite a lot higher density than our typical benchmark. And I've got a map here. The blue line shows the route we drove in our truck. So we spotlighted, we drive around our truck and spotlight and then classify the deer. So the blue line is where we drove. We have a dot on there with different sizes that talks about the number of deer we've seen. So you can see the highest density is in that kind of central area right there. This one just kind of zoomed in a little bit more. Now, you asked me a question, you sent me an email asking me a question about birth control and such. The department and the state, we don't do any birth control. Nothing like, no birth control. The deer here, it's not a closed population, so the deer are migrating in and out. So there's constant movement of deer. Birth control is a year-round effort. And even with birth control, you're still going to have damage and the same issues you're having. So we don't do that. And we don't relocate problem deer. You're just relocating the problem to another area. A lot of the habitats outside of here already have deer populations. So we're not moving deer around. There's disease issues, and things like that. So. Did you guys have some questions?
Jason?
Yeah.
In your total area that you guys take care of, that you personally take care of, just a personal observation I've had over the 10 years I've lived here is, and my wife has lived here, her family's been here since 23, and they've noticed that this year last year there was a lot more twins and 2 sets of triplets that we have seen. Is that a trend that we're seeing? Is that something that the environment has caused, or is this just an abnormal year that's happened?
Well, yeah, this year we're just wrapping up our deer surveys for the year, and we've seen a good ratio of fawns this year. So it was a good recruitment. So I think it was a productive year for the deer. So, so yeah, we've seen numerous twins and singles as well. So our fawn ratio is pretty good this year. I think it's just a cyclic.
Just a
It's just
cyclical
cyclic,
thing.
yeah. Depends on the weather, the food, and the health of the females, so.
Yeah, the one set of triplets that was near our place, obviously the third one didn't live through through the whole span. It died early on, but still thought it odd to see triplets.
Okay, yeah, it must be, if you're seeing an animal that's got triplets, it's well-fed, very healthy.
Yeah, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, something probably abnormal's going on. Typically, they're probably getting fed or something.
I would like to clarify something that in your briefing here, you were saying that you would trap, but there would be no trapping and moving. If you
Yes.
trap something,
That's
that animal
correct,
was
yeah.
trapped was going to be removed, was it?
Yeah, so your agent would have to set up a live trap,
Right.
trap the deer, euthanize the deer, donate the meat.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted everybody to make sure they heard that.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a transporting of
No,
wildlife from here to another area.
no, no.
And if I'm understanding this correctly, you're saying that as a whole, the Dune City area that you observed is pretty much just the benchmark, nothing abnormal. Is that what I understand? Except for that one
Except for,
area.
yeah,
Except for
there's
Dunes
definitely
area?
some, yeah, there's definitely a higher density in certain areas that likely are from folks feeding the deer.
I would like to speak on something on that, especially as I'm a wildlife should know. If you look, and I live, Derek here, I wasn't home. Where we live, in the area he's talking about, look where it's located to all the water. There's water anywhere it wants to go. They have to drink just like we do. They have to eat just like us. So they're smart enough to live around there. Plus, their pattern, their movement pattern is totally different from one time of the year to the other. I see them every day. I follow them. Their pattern, like, and to answer about the cats, my cats chase deer and they play together. They don't try to hurt them. But where the population is where water is, so they can, anywhere they go there, especially where I live, they're on Spoots Lane, they only have to go a ways and they're to water. And as far as twins, I've seen them growing up all the time. It's not uncommon to have twins.
No, not uncommon to have twins, but triplets,
That's rare, yeah. But like he mentioned, usually one does not make it.
Yeah, it did.
That's almost guaranteed.
Yeah, I would think so. That would be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, that usually happens.
Anything else, folks?
Sir, what's the definition, your definition of an agent? You talked about the agent would trap or the agent would kill or whatever. Who's an agent?
The person you hire to do the work to capture and euthanize the deer, like we use Wildlife Services. They're with the United States Department of Agriculture.
So that's a federal agent.
Yeah, so that they do contracts, cities can hire them to do this type of work.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it's not landowners hiring people, it's Dune City
It's the city.
hiring
Yes,
someone.
yes.
With the landowner's permission.
Exactly, yep, you have to have that all written in agreement, just like it outlines in the policy. Yep, yep,
Makes sense.
yep.
Do we have any feel for what the cost is for that? Per animal or per?
I have no idea.
Okay.
You'd have to contact them. They could give you an estimate because they've done it before. And if you'd like, I can give you their contact info too.
But we as a community are really at that benchmark, as you say, and in many areas below the bench, it sounds like.
Yeah, and in a whole, the whole area is, yeah.
And do I read this correctly that we, the city, are the ones that determine whether we're overpopulated or not? Or if it's a nuisance, yeah. We determine whether it's a nuisance or not?
Who complains?
It says the department will determine if it's a nuisance, yeah. And we have been getting calls in Dune City from people who are complaining about the deer. They're complaining about people feeding the deer. So feeding the deer is the problem. And what happens is people are feeding the deer, and then we've gotten, in Florence and Dune City area, we have a lot of bear problems as well. And so when they're feeding the deer, some people scatter it, some people have it in bird feeders, some people do it by hand. There's always food residue on the ground, and so they're always attracted. Bears smell very well. They're coming in and picking up scraps. They smell it, they're coming in, checking things out. If people are just dumping it on the ground, you can't clean all that up every day. So when you feed animals, it just creates a whole chain of problems. The deer are friendly, but then you're bringing in the bears. Then the bears get habituated to people, and then they start breaking into houses and tearing into sheds, and then it becomes a human safety issue. So then we have to remove the bear. When you have a high density of deer, the cougars eat the deer. Cougars will then come into town looking for food, and so then we get another human safety issue. So it kind of compounds the issue with feeding. So that's the underlying problem, in our opinion, is the feeding.
Although if we would have not voted to stop hunting cougar with dogs back in '94, we wouldn't have as many cougars. Just saying.
Yeah, their populations have rebounded. And they were rebounding at the same time that got turned over as well. They're slowly, and now cougars are, they occupy all available habitats, and yeah. So.
I had a question, I had a thought. If somebody was in their backyard and they had their dog, or a kid was there, and he felt the deer was threatening, could you actually use like an air horn like you have on a boat? A little blast? Would that send a deer off?
Yeah, you can try to haze the deer off. We issue free permits for folks to haze the deer off their property. You have to have a permit from us to haze wildlife because it's against the law to haze wildlife. So we can issue people hazing permits. They can haze the deer off with an air horn, banging some pots and pans.
Would that work for the bear too?
Yeah, it can. It'll scare it off. Sometimes when bears get too habituated, they won't.
Oh, can I kind of follow up on that? It sounds to me like you're saying that to chase a deer off your property or out of your immediate vicinity, you need a permit. So if I go outside and I go like that, I need a permit to do that?
It's kind of a gray area, but I mean, you're not really harassing it too bad to hurt it or anything.
No, I mean, my intention has never been to hurt the deer.
Yeah.
But if I make noise or pick up something and throw at them or something, that is harassing the deer?
Yeah,
That
you
is illegal.
just want to get a permit from us so you can harass the deer.
Okay, how much do you charge for those permits?
They're $0. They're free.
Okay. What is the process you do? Can I talk to you afterwards about what the process is to get a permit?
Yeah, you can call us tomorrow.
Okay.
You know what really works good is a motion activated rainbird sprinkler. They are afraid to death of them, it doesn't hurt them, and they don't come back. Try it, even in the wintertime.
Always works better for neighbors.
The deer I can tolerate it. You got something? I'll wait till you're done. Oh. Anything else for Jason?
All right. I'd like to say what I found out.
Jump in there.
And, we have ODFW here, and we have state troopers here, so that's good.
It's a good balance.
It's been on, we've been working on this, I have for a couple of months now. I've talked to about 20 folks, pretty much the same. Most of the folks like them, most of them don't have an opinion one way or another. Some folks have a very hard opinion. 8 have them here, destroying everything while I'm gone. I personally have seen, in my research, people feeding deer. I've been shown telephone, the camera on phone of their neighbors feeding deer. I believe you touched on it. I don't think that the answer is trying to transport them or to come in right now and kill them. I believe what Dune City needs to do is, in cooperation with ODFW, you are the stewards, and with the state police, they're the enforcement arm of, back up here, it's against the law to feed game animals in the state of Oregon, is that correct?
Well, folks, you can use bait for deer.
No, I mean
Yeah.
in a residential, going out, is it against the law for folks on the hilltop to feed apples in their front yard too?
Well, it is because you have an ordinance.
Okay,
Yep, it's not a state.
it's not
no.
a state law.
No.
Okay,
Only for bear, cougar, wolf.
okay, I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
it doesn't change what I think we need to do. What I think we need to do, I would still say then, if it's not a state enforcement issue, they're not breaking a state law by feeding game animals in Dune City. Under our guidelines, under our rules, do we have the ability to call a state trooper if we have a nuisance problem?
May I? When I get a complaint,
Yeah.
the first thing, I talk to the people that I get the
Right.
complaint about,
Right.
but I also call ODFW
Okay.
and the sheriff's office, and then the
Okay.
sheriff's office relays it. And a lot of times, ODFW will send somebody out to talk to the people as well. And that usually takes care of it.
I
At
think-
least it takes it out of the public eye. I mean, what they're doing in the backyard, I don't know.
I think we have to get a lot more proactive on that. I believe that we need to initiate a sign program. And I don't mean a paper sign, I mean a metal sign program at the three main entrances into Dune City. Perhaps a sign on Hilltop, perhaps a sign over in Westlake that states our ordinance and goes, we don't have to get into the whole logistics of how the punishment go down, but just say, for example, the first offense is a phone call from James, from Dune City. The next would be a visit from ODFW or a state trooper or a sheriff that it needs to cease and desist. The third would be a fine of whatever amount to be predetermined. But that, and make it mean something. Put the sign up, you get a violation, you get the phone call, you get a second one, you get a visit one, you get a third, you do a third violation of that, you get a fine. I believe if we get rid of the nuisance, the feeding of the deer in Dune City, I believe this problem will take care of itself. That's what I think. So I really think we need to concentrate on the feeding of deer. I think we get rid of that, I believe we get rid of the heavy concentration in places. One example real quick is what a neighbor had a real problem with the nuisance deer. They were destroying flowers and stuff. That neighbor that was feeding them moved away. The deer problem in their property went away. It's just one example that I think it carries some weight. So I just think that here at Dune City, we need to be more proactive. We need to put up some metal signage explaining that there is an ordinance in Dune City against feeding deer in Dune City and enforce it.
Yeah, you guys have to enforce it.
Yeah.
The state can't enforce your ordinance. But if someone is feeding deer and a bear comes in and starts feeding on what they're feeding the deer, then that becomes a state issue there when the bear gets involved too, so.
Well, that's interesting. Personally, I've seen several, I just cleaned up my garbage, bear got in my garbage cans, and then that's on my property and that's me. But they're in the neighborhood thicker than they've been, and I've seen a cougar at 9 o'clock in the daytime, which I know is highly unusual at my mailbox, so I think that's starting to happen. I think we need to get rid of the concentrations of deer. I believe that putting signage up and enforcing our own ordinance would go a long ways to eliminate the high population counts. where there's
Yeah, no, I
feeding.
totally agree with you on the feeding. If the feeding would stop, then the deer density should
I
drop.
think that's what we should do first before we worry about transporting, moving, or killing any deer. Give that an opportunity to work.
Well, another big threat would be that they'd have to have one slow dance with you.
That would be the ultimate.
I would just like to, I think we're being a little hypocritical just about deer. Feeding any wild animal can bring in any of them.
Yeah.
All these bird lovers that have their bird feeders out there,
The deers love them.
the deers love the bird feeders, the bears love the bird feeders. So you can't, to me, that's being hypocritical to just concentrate on people that feed a deer.
Well, right now, the problem is deer. When birds get...
Well, I haven't had any problem. My problem's been coons and bears.
Right now, the issue in front of me is deer.
No, I
I'm concentrating
understand.
on
I
that.
understand that, Duke.
Anything else, folks? Jason, thank you very
All
much.
right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you very
Thank
much. And audience, thank you very much for being well behaved and orderly. Don't throw anything at us. It's great.
You're welcome. And if we want our words to be taken, we gotta present it right, present ourselves.
There you go.
We're presenting ourselves.
Old business, water testing.
Would you like to take a couple of minute break to allow people that want to leave?
Yeah.
Not chicken. But okay.
I just know it's really hard to talk over them as they start to leave.
All right.
Yes.
We'll take a short intermission. How about that? Let's do 5 minutes.
Yes, and thank you for letting us.
You can't sneak in.
Okay.
All right, let's come back to order and get into old business, water testing on Little Moheek.
In your packets this evening, I put a copy of an email I received from Kyle at the Siuslaw Watershed Council with regard to the cost he anticipates for doing a temporary water quality testing program for Little Moheek Reservoir. And so that's why I'm here this evening he's estimating about $500 a test. We're still working on the procedures on about how long and what kind of tests and this kind of thing. I don't want to say, I have ideas on what I'd like to see take place in talking to some of the people that are concerned about it. There may be some chemical testing that might be good to have done, and if that's the case, that's quite expensive. So we're all seeking grant funding to pay for that, to get some baseline chemical testing results in there. DEQ, David Walls has sent information regarding what is called, just a second, a sampling and analysis plan that he has offered to help oversee. That is a temporary version, basically, of a QAPP. We have the quality assurance project plan in place for our water testing program already for the 2 lakes. This would be a temporary one with regard to just the reservoir. I anticipate a year or 2, and that's all it would need to be, and then there would need to be some sort of discussion on what's next, if any. So I'm asking if you want to enter into the IGA with the Siuslaw Watershed Council for doing the water testing, then I'd like to know, because it's going to take a number of hours for me to write the sampling and analysis plan and do the research that's necessary to get it in place so that we can do an IGA that says, okay, and this is how we want it done.
And explain why we would be doing this with them rather than the testing we normally do.
Because when you adopted when you approved the final plat for the subdivision as a condition, one of the conditions you approved was that if there's any evidence to show pollution occurring in the lake, in the reservoir, in the water in the reservoir, that we have to shut them down, that they will be shut down. I need to know a baseline. I can't just say, well, it looks good to me. You know, I'm not an expert along those lines. This would provide us with documented evidence. This is what it was then. This is what it was after a large storm event. This is what it was after a drought, or a very dry period, certain times throughout the year. we all know that it is not an easy task. It's not. I mean, if something happens and there's a lawsuit filed, it gets real ugly real fast. And we'd like to have scientific data based on the mechanisms and the assurances that the Department of Environmental Quality uses so that we
You don't
have
think we
something
have
that
that
we
same problem with Mohink or anywhere else we test?
I don't, but that's just me because it is a reservoir, which means the silt stays behind and just the water flows over the dam and through. But I don't know what happens under the street, other than on more than one occasion I've had to call the state to have them, or the county, to have beaver dams.
Oh, yeah.
Because they get blocked out.
Why isn't the developer involved in paying for at least part of this cost of
I have not
testing?
approached him with that.
Geez.
Because it is a requirement that you require, not him. And I mean, it was a requirement that the city put in place. Will he be willing to help? I don't know. I mean, I don't mind asking him. But I wanted to ask you guys first. Chemical testing or DNA testing can run $2,000 to $2,500, if not more.
Sure.
I don't know, when he sent over this, we had not had a chance to talk about what parameters we wanted tested, other than a brief conversation that occurred here in the front room after hours one night. But
I think that needs to be clarified for sure, in my opinion. I mean, if we approve something, we need to know the costs and then who's going to pay for it.
well, right, and I agree with that. I just, true.
It's just not standard.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just hate to spend office staff and time and energy and effort to do something and then,
I agree.
because that's expensive too.
So Jamie, if we were to pay for this, where would it come from? Where'd the money come from? Because our contingency's gone.
It would have to be in the budget. I mean, that would be part of the budgeting process. And since we're coming up on goals, that would be something that would need to be identified as something that needs to happen as a goal.
So you're saying it wouldn't start until next year? The testing?
I don't know when it would start. It would all depend on when this sample things, if it's approved, the sampling and analysis plan is approved by DEQ.
I get that. So it sounds like you're not thinking it's going to be this year. If it has to get in the budget, that'd be next year budget.
It would have to be next year's budget anyway. We don't have it here. I mean, we have a budget for water testing. We do. And there's still money left over right now. But additional funds, the city has not used what has been budgeted for water quality testing completely in many, many years. Bear in mind that that money, the amount that I budget includes the possibility of having to do chemical testing for toxicity of microcystins in Silkus Lake. That's very, very expensive. And so I build that into the budget just in case every year.
Good.
And so we don't always use that. I'm just not sure how it would get paid for, so.
We do know the order, how things would have to happen. We'd want to have this eventually before any work started on the next addition to the Little
All right, well,
Roy.
I've got a ways to go before work can start.
Well, so we're not really under the gun here.
Not that much, no. I mean, I can see how long it's gonna take me to do this, and if it's as complicated as I'm afraid it's going to be. Thankfully, it's very similar to what we already have in QAPD, so I can cut and paste. So,
I would like to see the verbiage.
for the sampling and analysis plan,
No, I'd like to see this verbiage of, you said that the city made this a requirement
okay. well,
during
that's
the
in the-
development. I'd like to see the verbiage of what was agreed to and what was agreed to that caused this to happen in the first place. If you could get us a copy of that, please.
And who paid for it?
That's why I want to see the verbiage.
No, you wanna see it right now?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't, I think we have a few things to do. One, we've got to look at,
And I may be further along with this
sure.
by next month and have more knowledge as to what tests we're looking at and what those current costs are.
Okay, thank you. All right, good. Hopefully we can see more of that next week.
Could I say something? It seems to me that we need to get some kind of testing done before the construction gets started. And that's gonna happen within a couple of months probably. They're gonna start logging that land and start cutting some roads. So I don't think we have a lot of time.
They have to get a 1200C permit from DEQ before they can start any of that. And they haven't even applied because they hired a new engineer to go in. And when he went in and did his own examination, he felt like the drainage system design that was there was inadequate. And so, and not in the best interest of water quality. And so that engineer is redesigning the drainage system now. And we haven't seen it. So I know that has to take place. And then DEQ has to make their determination on a 1200C permit.
All right. So you're saying this is off 6 months or so?
I don't know how long it'll be, because DEQ, I don't know how long it'll take for, that's not in my bailiwick. But I do know, I did talk to Mr. DeBry, and he's already logged everything off of there he wants. I mean, it was done years and years ago before the subdivision was, so over 10 years ago, when the subdivision was
Well, whatever's there, they're gonna cut down. You know.
well, people will cut down when they want to build their homes, yes. But Mr. DeBry doesn't intend on logging. The road's already cut.
No, there's many roads, the plan has additional roads to be cut.
The one road that goes around, except the cul-de-sac, that's not done yet. And the little cul-de-sac up there.
Yeah.
But the other one, because the water system's already in place. So,
Okay, as long as you're sure that we have time.
okay. I'll let you know next month.
All right, thank you.
They still have to come get permits, so I still have control of that.
Yeah, as long as we've got control of the permits, we should be good.
Well, I think if the development itself inherently causes the need for that water to be tested above and beyond what Wohingham or
Sure, it's normal testing, yeah.
then the developer needs to take that on. We're requiring it. He needs to pay for it. That's my opinion.
How to proceed with water meter acquisition?
This one's a little bit easier. The $39,000 quote that we received for 200 meters is still good, bearing in mind that that's buying all the meters at once, and they will include free shipping if we buy all of them at once. If we piecemeal it,
Through Amazon?
well, yeah. If we piecemeal it, we have to pay for all the shipping.
Exactly.
So, I envisioned us lining the walls with boxes of water meters. And then.
Only 200.
No, it's only 200. But then I spoke with Brandy over at Oregon Water Services, and they have a storage facility that they would be willing to store them there with only a few coming over so that we do all the inventory and track all the numbers and replacement and all that stuff.
Who does the installation? Is that somehow in the
That would be,
contract?
that would be the contract that we need to sign with Oregon Water Services or whomever. We have a current agreement with Oregon Water Services for installation of all water meters.
So that's over and above the 39,000.
Oh, yes, yeah, the 39,000 is strictly for the meters from the company. Which is why we still need to do it piecemeal.
So what do you need from us?
Well, originally I didn't know I was gonna have storage, and I didn't know whether you wanted me to
Oh,
go
I
the full
thought-
39,000. The 39,000 purchase would not take place until after the new fiscal year anyway.
So take
So it
place
would be
after
in July,
July.
after July 1.
Okay.
bags before I knew we had a place to store them.
Okay. So when do you need to know, when do you need to have authorization to purchase?
Anytime I can get authorization to
Yeah,
purchase,
'cause
I
we-
just need to
we
put it
keep this up for
in
months.
next year's budget, and I need to know before next year's budget.
So that we
I
can put it in the budget
Yeah.
before we do the budget. All right.
So if you want me to put this off to another meeting, I can, it just doesn't.
I'm not, I think we came to, you know, agreement a couple months ago on it, waiting for that decision, but that's my remembrance.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah. So, do you need a vote from us to proceed to make the purchase, or to sign a contract to make the purchase?
No, I
Or
just
we-
need authorization to make the purchase.
Do it? Okay.
Now, it's the purchase of one, or is it the purchase
Oh.
of two?
Oh, I see what
You
you
know,
mean.
we got the 5/8, and then we got the 1 inch. We kind of were thinking the 1 inch.
This was just the 5/8 inch.
Oh, this is the 5/8.
That's why there's no number over here.
And then the 1 inch would be an offer to the property owner if they want to go. It would really be, they wouldn't want to do it if they don't already have 1 inch, but if they have 1 inch, then there's not very many of those that I'm aware of.
How many homeowners have water meters in Dune City, roughly?
200,
200.
it's about 78 or something like that. I mean, it's not very many, but we've got new homes that have come in that have been waiting for water meters for quite a while now.
Would that be the first install, would be new stuff, I assume?
Yes,
Yeah.
the new stuff, and then I go contact the people who have the oldest meters in the order that they were installed before.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to move ahead with the purchase of these when we have the money in our new budget.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none? Move forward with this finally.
Thank you.
Finally. Executive session. New business, committee for citizen involvement.
In your packet,
Yep.
you will see a written report from Bonnie Allen, chairperson of the Planning Commission.
She didn't sneak out.
This is a very interesting report. I wanted to stay for it.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to read it.
I can't make Bonnie.
No, we already asked Bonnie, she said no, we can,
All right.
that's fine. In October of 2013, the City Council adopted ordinance number 223, amending the Citizen Involvement Program portion of the city's comprehensive plan and establishing a committee for citizen involvement, which is CCI, as required under the Oregon State Land Use Planning Rule 1. Ordinance number 223 also appointed the city's planning commission to serve as the city's CCI. The primary objectives of the CCI are to assist the city council with the continued development of a CIP, Citizens Involvement Program, that promotes and enhances citizen involvement in land use planning and to evaluate the process being used for citizen involvement. The CCI is required to submit an annual report to the city council on the effectiveness of the city's CIP. In 2018 and 2019, the Planning Commission, in its role as CCI, directed city staff to publish and post public notices soliciting applicants to a CAC to review proposed changes to the Dune City Land Use Code, Chapter 155. Okay, Section 155.4, well, is that when it started, was 155.4? It went all the way back, didn't it?
2018 and 2019 was when the planning commission and the CAC reviewed section 155.4.
Okay, and provided recommendations on the changes to the Planning Commission. With only 3 citizen applicants at the time, the Planning Commission also appointed its members to the CAC. In November, the group of 8 began to review 155.4, and 2 CAC volunteers resigned from the group by May of 2019. The remaining CAC members completed their review of the chapter 155.4 in September of 2019 after 8 meetings. Kudos to Commissioners Bonnie Allen, Barry Summer, Jamie Porter, and Ken Pesnell, and residents Ed Koplick, Keith Garvey, and the late John Stead for their support and participation in the review process. In summary, with only 3 residents appointed to the CAC to review Chapter 155.4, the number of volunteers willing to participate in the land use code review process has declined somewhat since last year. However, in October, there were 8 residents who turned out to participate in a planning commission work session to discuss outdoor lighting regulations. The planning commission reviews on a quarterly basis citizen comments and concerns expressed during meetings to determine whether the commission should take action. This year, public attendance at regular planning commission meetings has dwindled, and to date, there have been no issues that require further attention by the commission. The planning commission will continue to explore ways to make recruitment efforts more fruitful, with the goal to eliminate the need of commissioners to sit as a member of the CAC. The commission will continue to monitor citizen input. As you know, it all depends on subject matter. We would love to have crowds like we did in the marijuana days.
Maybe not.
For the septic.
Or septic, yes, septic was pretty active
Oh, no
too.
thanks.
And deer brought a pretty good crowd. So, but the planning commission, I think, is doing an exemplary job in getting the word out, and staff, getting the word out and trying to encourage people to attend the meetings. And again, we would encourage all people who are interested in what happens in Dune City to sign up on our interested parties list so we can email you so you can check. And I try to put little interesting tidbits in the emails when I send them out now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Resolution to adopting amendment to the personnel handbook.
Okay, that's 99% of your line here.
52 pages.
Yeah, 52 pages.
The state of Oregon passed more stringent language with regard to harassment requirements,
Bullying.
pregnancy, which we are not required on pregnancy or disability, specifically for staff because we have less than 6 employees. But I did include a whole bunch of stuff like that. They've revised the revision based on lawsuits regarding marijuana and alcohol use on the job. And so all of these things had to be incorporated into our new personnel handbook.
The one thing I noticed that I thought was lacking is employment status, which is number 2 in section K. We talked about performance evaluations, performance reviews.
Yeah, that's been
I'm not used to seeing such leeway language like strive to or goals to. I'm usually used to seeing annual, semi-annual, that kind of thing, where it actually brings it to a date where these performance reviews are supposed to be done. So I didn't know if this is this a carryover? Is this something that we actually looked up to personnel law to find out that we can say, well, we're going to try to do an evaluation on an individual every year, but if we don't, it's okay, because we said we only attempted to do it?
I don't know.
Would you check that, please?
I can certainly check it because I have never had one. And neither
My
has
point.
anybody. And I've never known them to be done while I was on the city council either.
Right, my point. I don't know that that is exactly something that we ought to continue to allow to happen.
Okay. I will double check the language and make sure that.
Yeah, that's good. Termination of employment. Actually, plays into something I'm going to comment on when we before we close. We also have carrying firearms or any other dangerous weapon on Dune City premises at any time.
What page is that?
Be page 48. I know there's a few of us that would take exception to that.
Probably.
Is that, again, is that a carryover, or is it a requirement? Take a look at that.
I don't know.
Okay, would you investigate that a little bit, please? Thank you.
In my becoming licensed to carry, I don't remember that ever, you can't carry them into certain federal buildings.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What was your point with that one? What was your concern with?
Many of us on this board and many of us in this town have license to carry.
And Second Amendment.
And a Second Amendment rights. So that might cause an issue, and I just would like to know if it's is there a state law that says about a city? Is there, what kind of, is this a self-made ordinance that we did back in, 62 or, exactly where that came from so that we can, and, I mean, if there's a law, then we'll talk about the law. If there's not a law, then we'll have a spirited conversation on that.
Yeah, sure we will. Okay.
Should I invite our insurance agent too?
Sure. Yeah. That's always a
Who
good.
probably also has a carrier.
That's exactly right. Okay, what do you need from us?
Nothing now, if I need to, I may need to amend it, so.
Yeah. Let's, if it's not pressing, let's wait for those answers, if you don't mind.
Oh, not at all.
Okay, I would appreciate it.
Overall, I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, actually, there's a few picky things like that might be in there. And again, like I said, they may be public law, they may not. They may be old ordinances from the people that were here 3 councils ago.
Jamie, is there a time frame in which that we have to have this approved?
Not that I know. I don't know.
Yeah, because it may have something to do with their evaluation.
Other than, if a loss occurs, then we probably won't.
Yeah,
cover
that's
by
it.
insurance, yeah.
Oh,
That's always,
that's one.
The insurance is the driving factor.
Yeah.
it is on so many municipal
Oh,
things.
they're driving the
It's
bus
just-
on a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're looking for any way to keep them doing. Best practices survey?
That is one of them.
That was interesting.
That's the CIS, one of several audits
Oh,
that
the audit.
we get from CIS.
That's right.
So this was one, but the one that I haven't gotten yet occurred while I was out of town. And then we did a follow-up meeting, and I was told I would be getting a list of things that should be done to ensure everybody's safety, the safety of staff. And I'm still awaiting that particular list. But yeah, these are the reviews that we go through several times a year.
Yeah, been there, done that. With all good purpose, it's meaningful. So it's not like it is a pain to keep it up, but at the same time, it's something we should do and need to be prompted to do so, and this is one of the good things that comes from it. Determination as to whether to acquire, did you need an action? You don't need an action on that.
No, that's all
Survey.
personnel
This is
handbook,
for our
we'll just do it,
information.
yeah.
Determination as to whether to acquire the entire draft language for contracting code updates.
Right, we received, and it's in your packet, a copy of the notice that we received. Periodically, our attorneys, local government law groups, puts together a packet that incorporates proposed language or model language for legislation that adopts the latest changes to statute with regard to contracting law. In Dune City, we have not updated our contracting law since about 2005. So even though I understand what those changes have been since 2005 and practice and do what I do based on what the code, the state law actually says. Our code doesn't comply with that. So this time, it's $700. If it's contract rules only needs an amendment, it's $175. For a full packet, it's $700 in it. And since we haven't done the amendments prior, and while I was on the council, it was brought up at least 3 times that I know of. And we approved it, but it never got done. And then you approved it for me, and I asked Carrie to do it over and she said, well, there's new ones coming down the pipe, why don't you just wait till the next packet comes out. So this is the next packet. And I just want to make sure you're okay with the expenditure so that we can get that part of our code updated.
So no problem with that, and in fact, we've discussed it in the past and approved those expenditures. But thank you for the reminder. Again, that reminds me, what is your signature level?
500,
Right.
unless you specifically approve a specific
On
item.
well, yeah, but I mean, as a normal operating process, you have a signature level of $500.
Do you find, Jamie, that that's generally an okay figure, or, I mean, times change, inflation changes, where are you at?
I think it's probably fine, because you also said that if it was something that we're gonna get charged penalties for being late, I can go ahead and sign and pay those.
Okay.
So I do that to try and avoid late fees.
And she has called me or Sheldon if there was
Right.
an issue that needed, so
Yeah.
But please keep us aware if that, if that $500 is not good for normal operating procedures, we need to know so that we don't stymie you guys any more than you already are.
Yeah.
Thank you. Reports. I don't have a report. Well, I kind of. I've been thinking about doing something, and most of you know, or easily had guessed where I stand politically. And I just want to throw something out at you so you can think about it before next meeting. I've been wordsmithing and putting together something that I want to show you at next meeting that I don't care. I've seen a lot of in the news cities that are sanctuary cities for this or sanctuary cities for that. I don't like the term sanctuary, but I am working on a document that I'll get to you guys and to Jamie that is what I refer to as a Second Amendment preservation document for this city. And just keep in mind, I know we have differences of opinions and stuff, and just want to throw that out there so that you know that something like that is coming. It doesn't take you by surprise. Nothing can happen until everybody's approval on things. So, but just a notice that may show up. Don't be surprised about it.
I can't wait for the next meeting.
We got Duke coming.
Can we see the draft?
Here come the crowd again.
Really? All right, community center report. Duke.
I guess we have I think we have somebody getting on the roof putting needles in our,
I knew somebody's dumping all their things, they're raking in their yard and dumping.
because we only got one tree.
Well, there's somebody in my house.
And I'm supposed to get that tree out.
So anyway, we got clean gutters, I guess we got one that's hanging there, and then what was the other one, that water is plugging up from what? I remember working on it, but I don't remember where it was coming from.
I'm not sure, other than, our, for those who've been to the restroom and seen the water, our well went dry. And we had somebody come out, replace some parts and this sort of thing, and when that happened, there's an awful lot of chunks of nasty stuff coming through the system. So I I think that's what it is. I
We'll
don't
check
know.
it out. We did that before, what, 2 years ago or so? A couple years ago?
Well, you cleaned out the
Cleaned out,
drain,
yeah.
but that had been like 30 years since that had been cleaned out. I think something like that, it was a long time.
I know.
But no, yeah, it's only been a year, and I don't know if it's pine needles or what. I know this tree next to the building is dying. You know, it's dead up at the top already. I've had tree guys actually show up and submit bids. You need to dig that out. So that's one of them, and I think that would help. But all these trees over here also, yeah.
Just that, and then, we've been talking about it for years, but I'm finally, I think by next meeting, I should have the new pump house up. So,
Yeah, don't want that,
take my picture.
don't want that well pump getting wet.
No. It's more for like freezing, but, yeah, we got all this global warming, that's never gonna happen again, so what the hell, just leave it out.
Councilor Snow, letter.
Water testing, it's pouring down rain, they're not doing water testing. We'll see you again tomorrow.
You just can't hold a bucket outside the window?
No, we're involved in that. That would be testing the rainwater,
Oh, okay.
which we don't care about too much.
All right.
If I may say something on that, I think it, and I haven't talked to Ed about it yet, but it is helpful for the records if we have a water test done after a major rain event, especially the first event of the season, because if there's going to be changes that are obvious, that's when they're occur. So just bear that in mind. Usually the spring is better because the snow is melting off and coming in.
Yeah, we tried to do it in November, it just didn't work out
Yeah.
well with the rains. They didn't cooperate. And then everybody puts their boats away for the winter.
Right.
So we don't have boats available. So if you can walk on water, we'd be happy to.
Sheldon,
Yes.
walk on water
Walk
there?
on water.
Is that one of your,
No.
What are your skills?
right?
All right, Public Works.
I don't have anything to report on Public Works other than the tree was removed that fell down during the last winter storm. So I did, and you'll hear about it in the emergency report. I did establish an emergency operations center at City Hall because within the first few minutes, first hour of that winter storm, a tree went down on Block Parkway Drive. Oh great, if it happened this fast, it's gonna be terrible. So I went ahead and set it up, got all the paperwork distributed to everybody and everything done. And it was a very quiet weekend, so there was no need. But it gave us a lot of practice as staff.
Good practice.
Yeah.
Emergency services.
There's not much more other than the WeLog. They now have an emergency management intern in the Florence office to assist with the revisions and updates of the emergency operations plan. So he started on Monday, and there's a meeting coming up to meet him. So, and we will continue to be working on the WeLog updates before every regular WeLog meeting. And that's pretty much it, except the meetings which are normally held on third Mondays of every month for January and February. Third Monday is holiday in both months, so it's the following Monday.
And your administrator for planning and staffing.
The CIS safety inspection took place. We are moving forward on FEMA. The map has been adopted by the parties that need to adopt it before we do. And so now it's time to move forward and get that finalized. And that's it. I don't have anything else to report.
Good as the order. Councilman Moore?
I have an item, which might be for the good of my personal order, but I'll bring it anyway. And that is that, given the considerable involvement that I have now with the school board, Sayaswa School District, and given the fact that their board meetings happen 75% of the time on Wednesday evenings, the second Wednesday of the month at 6:30 in the evening. And given the fact that I often have to be there to give a report, it does make it difficult to be in two places at once. And so I would like for the council to at least consider the possibility of, I don't have any trouble with Wednesdays in general. The school board meets 9 months out of the year on the second Wednesday and 3 months out of the year on the third Wednesday. So if it would be possible to consider meeting on either the first or the fourth Wednesday of the month, it would certainly help my personal situation, but I recognize that everybody's busy and has their own issues to contend with, so I merely throw that out as a consideration.
I know it helped when we moved from the first Wednesday to the second, because we gotta get that work in. Or what would we move from Tuesday?
It was Thursday.
It was Thursday.
That's what
It was always the second
Favorite time.
Thursday.
That really helped a lot.
That's been a good move.
Well, and to mention, Bob has wrote me into that same committee,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, to me personally, it doesn't matter what day we have.
nor do I. It doesn't interfere with your tennis, does it?
No, and the reason that I was pushing real hard on getting it on Wednesday rather than on Thursday
Right.
is because the office is closed. on
Yeah.
Thursday.
And I have no problem with that.
That's
fine.
great. That worked out well.
We could shift to Wednesdays or.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's not, it doesn't matter to me what Wednesday it is.
I can't do the first Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm tied up.
Well,
I wouldn't be able to do the first
and that
Thursday
wouldn't work for
either.
anybody else either.
Yeah,
Or Wednesday.
Fourth? What's the due to you?
It interferes, or does it?
Thanksgiving.
Yours is Thursday.
The planning
This
commission
year?
meets the fourth
What?
Thursday. The planning commission meets the fourth Thursday, but not on a
Not the
Wednesday.
fourth Wednesday.
Fourth Wednesday, good for you?
Usually.
And then maybe you won't get amended bills of the session anymore,
There you go.
because everybody will have sent them in time.
For what day?
The first, or the fourth Wednesday?
Fourth Wednesday.
Of the month?
Fourth Wednesday? I think so. I'd have to go look at my big calendar.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as a normal course of business, it doesn't.
Like, there are things on the third, so that would be a problem,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
fourth,
But not
I
fourth.
think in general is clear,
Right.
but I'd rather double check.
Jane, would you check your calendar to make sure what happens here? Send us all an email. It sounds like most of us are fine. I want to make sure that
Yeah.
Susan isn't.
Needs everybody to be okay. And then we would need to consider the fact that whenever we make that shift, there's going to be a 6-week delay
Yeah.
from one meeting to the next. And that could affect some
It
items.
definitely affects FEMA, and I'm not going to let it, so it would not start until after the
Fine.
FEMA public hearing.
Okay.
That's fine.
I don't anticipate that being continued, but if it does, you
Should
need
be.
to make sure that it.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, let us know, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm really sad that we are willing to move it, because now I got to come to all your meetings.
You thought that was your out, is that right?
You guys really don't want to move this, right? Thanks, Duke.
Yeah.
Tom, anything?
Yeah, Jamie, do you have the link, or can you send me the link for that harassment thing that we have to
Again?
do?
Yeah. I mean-
Oh, same here.
Just
So all
send it
of
out
it-
to everybody so that.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll try again.
Thank you.
Speaking of missing links.
Duke.
I'm glad to see the citizen involvement
Yeah, me too.
tonight. I think that's how you get things done. It has been an issue in Dune City a long time. I think that we're well on our way. I think we can take care of this problem in-house.
I do too. Sheldon?
No, I think I'll pass on this one.
Man, we'll count on you for a joke. if you ever do. Falling in.
Well, just look at me.
Yeah. Susan, anything?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? We are closed at 7:40. Thank you all.